I am Mia Mulder, the beginning and the end, the alpha and omega, professional exhausted YouTuber. It seems like there's a lot of people out there who don't believe in God, which, frankly, I find a little bit offensive, considering that I've been making YouTube videos now for a year professionally. That's plenty of empirical evidence for you, isn't it? But I realize that religion is a bit of a hot topic for some people, and atheism is kind of assumed to be the smart option. And I think that that might be a bit wrong. I mean, if you're looking for evidence of God's existence, here I am. But I get it. Let's sit down and talk. Let's discuss. So calm down and let's discuss God and atheism. I haven't really heard a lot from atheists lately, and I wonder why that is. Maybe it's because the discourse has become so toxic that no one really wants to interact with it anymore, and that's why I feel that I should be the one to drag it kicking and screaming back into 2019, because I hate myself. There are probably going to be a couple of atheists out there wondering, how the hell can I even bring some nuance to this question? God is obviously not real. How dare you question my science, my ration, my logic? And there might be some theists out there thinking that, ooh, now Mia is going to demolish them atheists with facts and faith and other things. Take that, atheists. And the fact is that I could probably have a really long explanation about atheism and religion historically, but the thing is, atheism is kind of a complicated subject. It's kind of one of those things that doesn't really have an answer. And if you think that I can solve religion in this YouTube video, then no, I'm not that powerful. To properly discuss atheism though, I think that we might need to talk about religion first, so that people know what we're talking about. The problem with that though is that there is no real definition of what religion is, and because of that, how do we even talk about it? In the West, we think of religion as being part of the church, believing in God, but that is a kind of Western approach to what religion is, a very Abrahamic approach. In other parts of the world, religion might just be adherence to a philosophy, or a way to organize a community. But we still call it religion because of the place that it has in society, and the way that it's similar to what religion is here. So the thing is, we can't really define what religion is, which kind of makes it hard to define what an atheist is too. Not believing in God, sure, that's a thing, but anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. This religion isn't just about atheism and religion, it's also about human suffering. And you know how much we love suffering on this channel. Ugh. But because religion is kind of loosely defined, we kind of need to talk about organized religion instead. Things like the church, more structured faiths that have an authority to them. And that way we're not just talking about the hot goth girls that keep talking about lingerie and bones on Twitter. And the thing about religion, especially organized religion, is that it has existed for basically as long as human society has existed. Almost every single human society ever has had some form of religion, but it's not a universal human experience that is core to what it means to be human, because not everyone is religious. There's always going to be some heathen out there living a godless existence by not believing in me. And you definitely should believe in me, because I'm God, remember? So submit to my faith. Or just hit the subscribe button and hit the bell. In general though, for ease of discussion, we kind of need to look at religion from two different points of view. From the individual and society as a whole. Sure, for an individual peasant living in the Middle Ages, religion to them might just mean going to the church once a week to get the news and hang out with your buddies. But in society, religion in the Middle Ages meant something incredibly different. The Pope might issue decrees that affect the entire world. They might call crusades, lead entire military campaigns. It might affect the affairs of kings and empires, but it might not affect the everyday life of the normal European. And the same thing is true today. Religion means different things at different levels, and we already know that, obviously. But these perspectives obviously mean that religion is very fundamentally different things. Religion to some can mean faith, the belief in something supernatural or spiritual. But for others, an organized religion can mean power, wealth, some kind of structure that doesn't exist otherwise. But for a lot of people, religion just means a way of finding meaning in the world, to find purpose. And, you can kind of understand why. The world is a very confusing place, and to find meaning is kind of comforting. And I'll get to other benefits of religion soon. But before we get to that, let's talk about those that don't like religion. So atheism is the belief that there is no God. And, you can kind of see where they're coming from. There's no empirical evidence that God exists. And sometimes when you look at fundamentalist Christians talking about how evil atheists are because they believe in evolution, they kind of seem silly. And at that point, atheism kind of seems to have a point. But the thing is, a lot of atheists recently in the discourse don't really criticize religion the way they think they are. And when it comes to atheism, there is obviously diversity in that as well. Atheism also means different things to different people. Some people don't believe in God and are very content in just that. But there are some people who are atheist to such a degree that they will actively fight against religion. Almost a sort of anti-theist. The foundation of atheism is skepticism, which is a thing that I think most people should have a fair bit of. People should be skeptical. People should question the things that they have around them. And for atheists, this means questioning religious authorities and the religion that dominates so much of the world. And being skeptical of something is very healthy, but it's different from being critical of something, because being skeptical just means doubt. Being critical means to actively deconstruct what you are opposing. And you kind of need to know about the subject that you're criticizing in order to criticize it. But the thing is, a lot of atheists don't. And that's kind of bothersome, isn't it? Especially if you're on team anti-religion. Like I mentioned earlier, religion is kind of different depending on what you're actually talking about, and you need to be specific. But that doesn't really matter to a lot of atheists, who seem very content in criticizing people simply because of faith. Maybe not criticizing the underlying power structure that might actually cause the problems that they think religion causes. Like how Richard Dawkins equates believing in God to some kind of delusion, how Sam Harris posits that religious faith and rational thought are opposites, kind of, or famously Christopher Hitchens saying that religion poisons everything. Although to give it to Hitchens, at least he's focusing on organized religion. Although he does also say that organized religion is violent, irrational, intolerant, allied to racism, tribalism and bigotry, invested in ignorance, and hostile to free inquiry. Which, that's an opinion. So a lot of atheists will question faith in general, religion as a concept, which I think is kind of weird. Obviously, religion has had issues historically, but I don't think that they can be attributed specifically to independent belief. It doesn't really matter if one singular person doesn't believe in evolution. Sure, they're wrong, but it doesn't really matter what they think, does it? What matters far more is if that opinion becomes solidified in politics, but it can only go so far if it's organized and if there's a power structure behind that idea. And maybe it's the power structure that you should kind of focus on instead. So a lot of atheist critique kind of focuses on mocking and deriding faith, which I don't really think makes sense, especially when there are other criticisms that you could level towards religion instead. Karl Marx once said that religion is the opiate of the people. And the thing is, that phrase has been widely misunderstood for a long time. What he meant to say is that religion does have a service in the world as a sort of painkiller. People who suffer a lot use religion to relieve immediate suffering, but also it keeps people back because it dulls people to the reality around them. As in, it dulls the pain, but it's also bad for you. So here's a bit of a hot take. I think Karl Marx is wrong? At least partially. The view of religion being as a sort of dulling of universal existential pain, trying to find meaning in a meaningless universe. Sure, that all tracks. Definitely. God knows I have existential angst basically every single day. But okay, here's the thing. I've kind of been criticizing atheism a lot already in this video, so you may think that I'm some kind of hardcore Bible-thumping theist, but I'm not, obviously. But you may remember that I mentioned a while back in a former video that I'm not an atheist, which people kind of assume of me sometimes. And I kind of get why people think that I am. You know, I've gone to university, I like to think that I'm pretty smart, and, you know, I'm on YouTube making content. The people on YouTube making content, you know, it's kind of assumed that they're not influenced by religion. But the thing is, I might not be religious either. Like, I used to be a hardcore atheist who, you know, loved Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris and the other ones, and that was all fine and good for like a long time. I thought it was fun to dunk on fundamentalist religious people. And then, one day, when I was pretty miserable, I kind of had a religious experience. But being a hardcore atheist that I was, I wanted to know more effective ways to dunk on the religious ones. But when I read Karl Marx's quote that religion is the opiate of the people, about how it was supposed to relieve immediate suffering, I didn't really get it. How can religion do that? Do people really suffer in a way where they need faith in order to cope? In order to, like, go on in life? Does that happen? Nah, it probably doesn't really happen. Oh, you sweet summer child. But then I started university, and my mental health kind of collapsed. And I remember very clearly walking home from a lecture one day, feeling like, you know, there's no point. What's the point? There's no point to this existence. Like, there's no meaning anywhere, and I can't really make my own, so... And that's a pretty depressing thought. I was kind of hopeless. But then, I kind of had a religious experience. I kind of felt this universal hug to me somehow, and I have no idea where it came from. And in that moment, I kind of started praying for the first time. And doing so made me feel better. Like I could feel a kind of connectedness with the universe that I didn't feel before. And that really helped me. And then, you know, I kind of got it. And then I had kind of unlocked a new feature of life. I could just pray, and I would feel a little bit better. And for me personally, I kind of felt that like, oh, is this religion? Is this faith? Am I communing with the spirits of the world? But obviously I had no idea what I was praying to. God? Myself? And I could hear my inner atheist telling me that like, you're not actually talking to God. You're talking to yourself. And if you feel better from it, that's just a placebo effect. But the thing is, does that matter? And I quickly came to realize that it doesn't really matter why I feel better. Like, sure, I might not actually be communing to the universe itself, especially considering that, you know, I am the universe. You know, I couldn't prove rationally, logically, that my prayers actually went anywhere. But, you know, that didn't really matter, because I did feel better. That's the thing about the placebo effect, that it does actually work, whether it has to do with medicine or with prayer. And ever since then, I kind of realized that a lot of people who are religious kind of feel the same way. They know that they can't really prove the existence of God anyway, but they know that they feel better by believing it. And so, does anything else really matter? But after I realized this, I kind of started feeling that Karl Marx was wrong. Or maybe not wrong, but at least missing the picture a little bit. Because sure, praying did ease my immediate suffering in the world, and it kind of gave me some sort of meaning, I guess. But it did just make me feel better. It wasn't just that it reduced the suffering, it just made me feel good. So while Marx would argue that religion pacifies people from seeing the oppression around them, I felt that having faith kind of helped me connect with more people and helped me see the oppression in the world and actually aided in my compassion. It kind of helped me get into the whole Marxy spirit. I still sometimes pray, but I wouldn't necessarily call myself religious because I can't really contextualize what it is I'm praying to. And so I kind of realized that the arguments that I had used before of logic and reason and science didn't actually matter within the context of faith. So, checkmate, atheists. But that's not to say that atheists don't have a point. Like, it's pretty obvious that religion has had a very significant influence on the world around us, especially when it's organized. And while my individual faith might not actually affect anyone around me, especially considering that I'm not part of a church, that doesn't mean that the faith of other people isn't actually contributing to something negative in the world. So many anti-abortion laws, for example, are justified using religion. And here the atheists kind of have a point, because many atheists will argue that, you know, they're not actually trying to make people disbelieve their faith. They're trying to secularize politics. They're trying to remove religion from the world of politics. And I think that a lot of people would agree with that. Obviously, faith shouldn't actually have anything to do with politics. But the thing is, when people criticize religion, they're usually trying to criticize something else instead. Like when some people say that religious people are inherently more homophobic. I don't necessarily think that the problem there is faith or religion. I think the problem there would be homophobia. And when people criticize the religion part instead of the homophobia part, I kind of feel that they kind of missed the mark. It also really doesn't help the atheist cause when so many prominent atheists are just like reactionary assholes. Like, okay, I get it. It's infuriating when people don't agree with you by standards that you think are absurd. Like, I get it. You know, I'm an historian and people reject history all the goddamn time and, you know, you get angry. I also get angry. But you're not really helping your cause when you criticize religion on merits that you don't really know anything about. I really like this quote. "This is not the philosophical atheism of Schopenhauer or Marx or Freud or Feuerbach. This is a sort of unthinking, simplistic religious criticism. It is primarily being fostered by individuals like Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, who have absolutely no background in the study of religion at all." Because as I mentioned earlier, religion means different things depending on the context. So you can't really talk about religion as a whole. You need to be specific. But many atheists don't do that. Especially when I've seen a lot of atheists kind of become evangelical in their anti-theism and kind of developing what I call a fetish for science. You know, I used to be that way too. When I was a hardcore atheist, I didn't really care about the intricacies of actual science or the process of what scientists actually did. I just care about science in a very general sense. In a way, science kind of became my religion for a bit. And for a lot of atheists, I think this is kind of the case too. Or at least the aesthetics of science, which might be why a lot of people are really into Elon Musk, because they think he's like really good science guy, when in fact, you know, debatable. But where does that leave atheism today then? Can atheism sustain itself? I get sometimes also that religion can kind of seem overbearing in society sometimes, especially when people use religion to justify bad things. But the thing is, people can also use religion to justify good things as well. Like how Pythagoras didn't just do mathematics, but also did religious philosophy. And mathematics was a way to understand religion and the world from a religious perspective. And just because you reject religion and focus on science doesn't actually mean that you're gonna do morally good things either. Because, as we know, science is a bitch sometimes. Okay, but where does this leave us then? Is God the answer? Is science and atheism the answer? No. Honestly though, this debate is dead. And it was dead before I brought it up, and it's probably gonna be dead after I make this video as well. And you know what? That's kind of for the best, isn't it? And the reason I think it's dead is because, you know, it's kind of a fact of life right now that religion and atheism is gonna be part of the world anyway. It's not really point to try to force it one way or another. Like, we're not successfully gonna force people to not believe in God. And I don't think that we're gonna get that many converts to atheism either by making fun of them on YouTube. But now you're maybe curious, where am I in all this? Because I mentioned that I wasn't an atheist. But, you know, as I kind of mentioned, maybe I am, maybe I'm not. You know, I pray, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything. Or maybe it does. Maybe I don't have the answer. And maybe that's okay. And I know that might be hard for a lot of people to grasp, but maybe we should start being okay with not knowing all the answers. And this is a point that I think many religious people hold, and that maybe a lot of atheists have a hard time grasping, especially when you're kind of obsessed with knowing all the answers and thinking that everything can be explained rationally and logically using science. But the thing is, maybe that's true, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. And a lot of people are more comfortable not knowing the answers. So while I agree that we should be critical of religious institutions, especially when they are harmful, if not knowing everything is sometimes helpful to people and they aren't harming anyone by doing that, then why not let them keep their faith? Isn't it better to cooperate, to further more material goals, than to bicker about what people think about gods and fates? And speaking of submitting yourself to a higher power, this video is sponsored by CuriosityStream. You see, Nebula is a new platform that's trying to make it so that creators like me don't have to pray to the algorithm every month. There are no ads, and instead viewers pay a subscription to get access to all sorts of content, including original content that some creators are working on, including me. And I've got a way that you can try it for free. See, some of that original content is funded by CuriosityStream, that subscription streaming service that has thousands of stellar documentaries. I recently watched this series called Why Are We Here? It's very relevant to the topic of this video, and it's pretty good. Normally, CuriosityStream is $2.99 a month, but if you go to curiositystream.com/Mia Mulder, you can get it and Nebula free for 1 month. Well, that was ranty, but you know what? That's fine. I assume that you all come here for your priestly rants anyway, so what's better than the direct word of God herself? However, there are some things that God herself would like to ask you, such as subscribe to my channel and hit the bell, because if you don't do that, God ceases to exist. And of course, thank you so much for watching that video. I want to give a special thanks to Aini Salminen, Alexandra Dewitt, Alicia Crawford, Amalia, Amelia Fletcher, Amethyst Terraberry, Amy Seven, Anna Acrasia, Austin K, Autumn, Catherine Stenson, Christopher Steinmuller, Dana Ferguson, Dirty Computer, Divine Yuri, ooh, Divine, that fitting, Xbox, Emil Rutkowski, Emily Christ, Emily Rains, Emma Not Goldman, Fox Kant, Garrett Gutierrez, Huang Wu, Jane Lusby, Janelle Torgesson, Jessica Fletcher, Jonathan Wardrell, Joshless, Josie Volpes, Jörgen Danielsen, Kitchens, LPQ Silver, Linus 2.0, Michelle, Miles Lampard Gillum, Molly, MSG, Nicholas Trevino, Patrick Stack, Phobos 2390, Riley Knox, Safi Huck, Shashka Aurelia, Scary Son, Simon Christensen, Thoros of Myr, Tiffany A, Uncle Cheese, Rosie, Vinder, and Vivian Crow. Thank you.